What's up, everybody? How are you? How's it going today? Welcome to the Yasmin Breakdown. Today, I have 5 stories for you, and I'm so excited. And we're going to start with the Michael Jackson biopic story. We're going to start off with that because a lot of people don't realize something. And I'm going to break it down today. I'm just going to give people a chance since I did say 7:45. So I'm just going to adjust my image just a moment before we get started. But welcome in, everybody. Welcome in welcome on in to the Yasmin Breakdown today. Yes, it is 7:45, so I'm going to go ahead and get it crack-a-lackin'. Today's first story is we're going to talk about the Michael Jackson biopic. The Michael Jackson biopic has made history, and whether you are a Michael Jackson fan or not, this is a big deal. Now, the success of Michael Jackson's biopic shows that his legacy still matters, okay? It still matters. And it's teaching us in real time how a black artist, who is long gone, by the way, can still reclaim the narrative around his life. I'm going to give you 5 reasons why the movie Michael crossing 1 billion proves legacy isn't something you leave behind. It's something that you keep fighting for. So I don't know if I said this loudly enough when I said the Michael Jackson biopic has made history, but it has crossed the $1 billion milestone. And you'll hear of musician estates and so forth, and you hear of people being bankrupt, and you hear of family members fighting, and you hear simply of all of these horror stories that are going on. And these things aren't going on with the Michael Jackson estate. And so it is worth having a conversation about. Number one, he had an estate that never stopped fighting for him. John Branca, and you guys, if you're Michael Jackson fans, you may have heard of this person, but John Branca has been sole executor since his co-executor, John McClane, died this past May. I don't know if you saw that in the news, but I had seen it. Branca has said he had a game plan going back to the week Jackson died in 2009. And it started with This Is It, to remind the world what a performer he was, then the Spike Lee documentaries, then MJ the musical, and building towards this film for 17 years. Katherine Jackson, Michael's mom, herself signed off on the casting of this film. And it just goes to show, when I think about the success of this film, the people around Michael Jackson cared about his legacy. Sometimes it feels like you hear of people who just want to take advantage of the star. And in his case, it really seems that people care. The second point that I want to tell you about is that the estate itself has never stopped defending his name, even mid lawsuit. And, I did a couple of videos just before the movie came out about these lawsuits. And they sued, and let me tell you how Michael Jackson's estate has sort of been defending him. They sued HBO over leaving Neverland, and the filmmakers behind Michael have said publicly they wanted to humanize but not sanitize Michael Jackson rather than relitigate guilt. And that approach has been contested from both directions, including by Leaving Neverland director Dan Reed, which tells you how much the fight over his legacy is still alive. But here's the thing. That consistency matters to his fan base, who has organized around his innocence for over a decade. I consider myself a member of the Michael Jackson fan base. And as I said, I was doing videos about these people who were trying to sue Michael Jackson all these years later. First said, no, he didn't do anything or whatever. I did videos about that because I felt it needed to be talked about, because I felt people were attempting to tarnish his legacy. So the number 2 point here was the estate had never stopped defending his name. Three, the third thing about this particular film that was so special is that the people who made this film weren't just his fans, but they were family. So you had director Antoine Fuqua, who we love. He does a lot of great movies. He did the Equalizer movies, and screenwriter John Logan led it. But you may know, I'm sure, Michael Jackson's own nephew, Jafar Jackson, plays him. Jafar Jackson is Jermaine's son. Okay, Jermaine Jackson. His son, Prince Jackson, was an executive producer who tracked the film's development. Nia Long played Katherine Jackson. Coleman Domingo played Joe Jackson. Okay, this wasn't an outside studio telling his story. His own bloodline was in the room. And I think this kind of stuff matters, right? Having people who are going to fight for you, who know you, who respect you. And it's not just a check for them, but it is, in fact, they are interested in maintaining this legacy that you built. And number four, and this is something that from time to time, I guess when I first started noticing it, it shocked me a little bit. And that is love for Michael Jackson on social media is real, it's daily, and it's not just around a release date. On June 25th, the anniversary of his death, fans worldwide synchronized playing Healed the World at the exact minute he died, right? That happened this year, gathering at Forest Lawn Cemetery and in cities like London and Madrid. Related TikTok tags are sitting in the 1.5 to 3.1 million post range, right? This is happening independent of any studio marketing budget. And if you go on, Instagram, TikTok, you go on some of these social media and you'll see all of these Michael Jackson tribute videos. People are dancing. This is without having anything to do with the movie at all. This is simply the love that his legacy still has all of these years later, right? And the fifth thing that I wanted to talk about as it relates to the Michael Jackson legacy and being a TV writer, film writer myself, Hollywood is struggling right now. And that's why this biopic, making it to $1 billion, is so significant, right? Because here's the thing, the 2025 domestic box office landed around 8.6 billion. And you might go, oh my God, that's a lot of money. And clearly it is a lot of money, right? But it's well below the 12 million the industry did in 2018, right? And here's the thing for me and my colleagues, 17,000, somewhere around 17,000 industry jobs were cut in 2025. This says nothing to the jobs that were never rehired since COVID. Okay. And so Hollywood, whether they try to paint the picture that everything is rosy and everything is okay, but people who have historically made a living inside of Hollywood understand 100% that things are different in Hollywood. And Hollywood has not recovered since COVID. It hasn't. So let me give you something to compare this to for just a moment. Even built-in franchises, sequels like Wicked for Good and Avatar Fire and Ash have underperformed this year. Against that backdrop, a music biopic becoming the highest grossing one ever made and closing in on 1 billion isn't just like this box office story. It is proof that audiences will still show up in numbers for something they actually believe in. And that is, in my opinion, the love that Michael Jackson really poured into the world while he was here. And while so many years after his death, it just keeps on, multiplying and you keep on seeing it. And this is my takeaway. This is what I want us to take away, the Yasmin Breakdown family, right? I want us to support Black artists. When we think about the Michael Jackson biopic, I want us to support Black artists. I want us to support Black authors. I want us to support Black creatives. I don't care what people say. I want you to support Black people in the arts, period. That's what I want you to do. I want you to support Black YouTubers. I want you to support Black podcasts, because what continues to happen is that even when our backs are against the wall, there's something that resonates about Black stories. People can say what they want about Michael Jackson. He still started as a Black boy in Gary, Indiana, right? So yeah, he became a global superstar. He did all the things. Absolutely. He still started as a Black boy in Indiana. All right. And I don't want us to ever miss that. So if you liked the biopic and you feel the story, support Black artists. All right, you guys, the second story that I have, and please get into the chat. We're building a community. I'm trying to figure out how to work it out. Yesterday was my 1-year anniversary on YouTube since I sort of restarted, because I had taken a whole hiatus, and YouTube in their loveliness sent me a graphic saying congratulations for 1 year. So last year, 1 year ago yesterday, I said, I have a story to tell. I have a voice. I want to bring some light into this world. I'm going to be on YouTube. And so that's what I'm doing. So make sure, family, get onto that chat, and I will get to them, your comments and so forth at the end. But here's our next question. Here's the question I have. Let me take him down. Can two Black R&B singers create sold out concerts without violence or drama? Okay. Can two sold out R&B stars, come on somebody, right? Can they create a sold out tour without any drama? Can that happen? Let's get into that. Let's get into that right now. Usher and Chris Brown. Here was the headline, okay? The media wants you to believe that Usher and Chris Brown cannot have a sold out tour without any violence. And so I want to believe that they can. But here's the headline, you guys. Fight during New Flame on the R&B tour. The chaos during Usher and Chris Brown's New Flame performance shows how reputation, not fact, often drives the story around Black male artists, even when they're not the ones involved. Okay. So I don't know if you guys had heard that story or not. I don't know if you had heard that story or not, but basically, as yesterday, they were the blogs and different people were basically saying that there was a fight on the tour or what have you, and that they had the fans believing that Chris and Usher were in fact in a fight. And I'm going to break down why that's not true, and really talk about why, we have to sort of stand up for our artists at different times, because some of this stuff that the media has in their headlines and things like that, it's just not right. So let's get into it. All right. So here's the three things worth clarifying regarding this story, right? There was a fight, okay? But the fight was in the crowd, not between Usher and Chris Brown, okay? Yeah, bodies were piling up apparently in the audience during the song. Security jumped over seats to break it up. Neither artist was even involved. This is a point worth making, because the media will put something out on the clickbait tip, right? And we're thinking, wait, Usher and Chris are beefing. And without even us reading through the whole story, we start sharing that narrative. And I want to say to you that the artists were not actually involved, okay? But the headlines were blurring it, and they were like, fight breaks out during Usher and Chris Brown performance. And this was implying that, hey, something was going on between the two of them. And then because of whatever people think about Chris Brown, whatever they think about Chris Brown's past, reinforced by things like the 2024 docuseries, Chris Brown, A History of Violence, we automatically going to say, oh, he must have started it. Oh, there must be a fight. And I just wanted to come on and talk about this because we have to be smarter than the headlines. And that's really what the Yasmin Breakdown show is really about. It's like, wait, let's get to the pattern. Let's get beyond the headlines. Number two, this tour is already carrying a certain amount of tension, right? Real tension, because, though I just made the point I just made, Usher and Chris did have a falling out, was apparently physical in 2023 at Brown's birthday party. I don't know if you guys saw the story on that. I'm thinking it was a minor dust up. That's what I'm hoping. But apparently Usher reportedly returned with a bloody nose. Okay. But here's the like silver lining in that. They repaired whatever their disagreements were, whatever it was. And I have no idea. They repaired it. And they put this tour together for their fans, right? So now when chaos breaks out at a show that they're headlining together, the audience goes straight to, okay, well, what's their history? When the actual incident came from the fans and not the two of them, right? And I wanted to clarify these points, and I wanted us to unpack them because we have a job, we have a role. And if we're going to talk about something, let's at least be factual. Chris and Usher weren't fighting. Let's make that loud. Okay, let's get that out there. And here's the thing, too, behind the headlines. The financial and cultural stakes for this tour are absolutely enormous. Okay. And this is what I want to say about this. Brown's last solo tour grossed nearly $300 million across 2 million fans. Okay. This is the highest grossing tour by a solo Black American male. Okay. People don't understand that Chris, despite people like him, don't like him, whatever, he continues to put out music and connect to his fan base. Usher's last tour grossed about 184 million and drew 1.1 million fans, right? Now, when you're packing stadiums, okay, at that scale with high expectations, some reviewers were comparing their tours to like Michael Jackson, Prince, and this type of situation, right? You're going to get some crazy energy, maybe some combustion, maybe a spark. But we have to keep clear heads and not allow media headlines to just take us away and assume our, stars, our singers, whatever, they were just fighting. Right. So we have to okay, let's reel that in. Let us not fall for the bait. Right. But let me give you a take about this that I feel, very deeply. You have two successful stars, Black men, still relatively young, who are selling out stadiums, selling out arenas, and bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars. Everybody's not a fan of people becoming successful. Let's just say what it is. Everybody is not a fan of seeing two Black men at the top of the food chain in their careers becoming successful. And so therefore, what can they do to tear away or take away from that success? Oh, let me do some, negative headline, because if I get you to believe that negative headline that they're fighting, maybe instead of you buying a ticket to this tour, maybe you do something else. So now the tour becomes less profitable. All I'm saying is look beyond the headline. Okay? Look beyond the headline, right? Because that narrative that, something broke out at their tour, leading people to assume it was Chris or it was Usher, makes us feel, they got some violence going on. I'm not even going to go, right? I'm not even going to go. And what narrative does that serve? That doesn't help Usher. It doesn't help Chris Brown. Okay. And so I like to say that really loudly because I think sometimes media will manipulate you. And the second thing I want to say is that, people like to separate you from your money, right? And so when you're out there independently doing something and, the record label, they're not able to necessarily get into your concert pockets, your manager or whatever, a lot of your concert money, your tour money is your money, right? And so a lot of people don't want a tour to be successful, period. They don't want a tour to be successful. And so if they can malign you and if they can get your fans angry at you, they won. They won. So all I want you guys to think about this is that look for all the, read the whole story, read beyond the headline, read behind the headline. And I just want to say when Chris was 16, I went and I took my daughter. We went and saw him perform. I think he was performing in Virginia or what have you. He was 16 years old when I very first saw him perform, and he was electrifying then. And I don't like talking about Chris Brown. I don't, because I hate that the conversation becomes about something other than his music, his singing, his dance. I don't like that. I don't like feeling like you almost become puppeted into talking about certain issues. When the things that happened back in the day, and I'm not even going to name names, y'all know what I'm talking about. I felt here was this young boy who grew up in a family where he had witnessed domestic violence. He has a chance to heal, but this was his story. This is him sort of almost seeing and reenacting some of the things that he had witnessed in his own life. And I heard far too many people who wanted to condemn him at, I don't remember how old he was at the time, 18, 19, I can't remember, 20, I don't remember. They wanted to condemn him for the rest of his life for something that he did essentially at the beginning of his life. I do not support that. I do not support that if it's Chris Brown. I don't, support it if it's Tim Brown. I don't support it if it's Jim Brown. I don't support it no matter who it is, because I think it's hypocritical. Because if you are, 18 or 19 years old and you look at yourself at what you did at 18 or 19, do you want to be held to that standard at 30 that you had, or at, that you had at 19? Do you want to be punished throughout the rest of your life? And I think that we make exceptions for other people, right? We want him to be punished, but we wouldn't want to be punished. And I just have to call out that hypocrisy. Now, I have not kept up with if there have been additional incidents and additional violence and all of that. So I just want to state that, but I just can't support anybody who looks at an isolated incident and says that person doesn't deserve to live, to support their family, to do da-da-da-da-da-da. The punishment doesn't fit the crime. And so I would like to reserve judgment because of the things perhaps I don't know in that area, and still say, if all things are good, these two men should be able to make money entertaining their fans. All right, y'all. I hope y'all are getting something out of this live today. I'm your girl, Yasmin Shiraz. This is the Yasmin Breakdown. And we're about to go on to the third story of tonight. I have 5 stories for you tonight. And I'm getting ready to get on to the third story of tonight. And I do research for you guys because I want to learn, about some of these people. And I do not know all of the folks, right? So I learned about a guy today named Adam 22. And I'm going to put a photo up of Adam 22 so that you guys can see him. I learned about Adam 22 today. He is a podcaster who has upset some Tupac fans, you guys. And I want to get into what he said and why Tupac fans are upset. Adam 22, the guy in the photo there that you see, recently claimed he has more of a right to Los Angeles than Tupac. And so it's interesting because what are you talking about? What does that have to do with anything? But he's been called out a little bit, and it points to this idea that you have people who try to insert themselves into Black culture and Black history and ownership of Black culture that they didn't build. And so some of the people who have come out criticizing him, this is what they're saying. And I'm going to give you how I feel about it in a minute. But let me tell you who this guy is, because I did not know him before today. Adam Grand Mason, known as Adam 22, is a podcast host and the founder of No Jumper. It's a media platform that has built its name interviewing underground rappers, SoundCloud artists, and internet personalities. And it helped launch the profiles of artists like Extension, Little Pump, and Blueface. Now, he is frequently sort of this, what they call a self-aware lightning rod in hip hop media commentary. But this is what's interesting to me about him, people who may be similar to him, and when they come after or compare themselves to our legends, Tupac Shakur certainly being one. So here's the deal. Adam 22's argument was that Tupac, quote, lived in LA for less than a year, but Tupac himself called Oakland home. Geography was never the source of Tupac's claim to Los Angeles. His music, his impact on the artists who came out of that city, and the culture he shaped were. Adam 22's logic, okay, that living somewhere longer entitles you to claim it. It replaces legacy with real estate, right? Now, when I, read this and, did the research on it and whatever, and I was just like, what? That makes no sense at all. That somebody would be able to almost compare themselves in a way and their contribution or their existence in LA to like Tupac, right? It's like kind of crazy because it immediately put me in the mind of California Love, the song with Tupac and Dr. Dre. Because that to me, even though it was a song about California, it had different stanzas, different points in there about Los Angeles. And it certainly connected the Los Angeles people to Los Angeles and Tupac with that song, right? So that part is a disconnect in my mind. And then there are millions of people right now that live in the City of Angels, right? And they have not contributed one meaningful thing to LA culture, right? They haven't contributed one thing that somebody remembers. They haven't contributed one thing. Like if I say California Love and I'm in LA, I don't have to be in LA and I say California Love and they're going to be like, you know what I'm saying? So people mistake what their contribution is to the situation. And then they take our legends who are in our community, and they insultingly compare themselves when they're not even on the same level because your contribution to the culture is not the same. You could own all of Hollywood Boulevard. You could own all of La Cienega Boulevard and still not have the contribution or value to Angelenos that Tupac Shakur had all of these years, almost 30 years after his death. Right? But again, in that capitalist mindset, let me talk about real estate because I can't really talk about the culture because I have no stake there, right? Now, Adam 22 has previously compared extension, I always called him extension. By the time I found out who he was gunned down. May he rest in peace. But he previously compared him to Tupac while admitting on camera he never knew Tupac personally. He defended interviewing one of the men convicted in Pop Smoke's murder, and he backed a comedian's rape joke aimed at a black woman rapper. Each time, the through line is the same: profiting from proximity to black culture while claiming authority he hasn't earned. Now, my thing with this is that Adam 22, as I shared, he built a platform where, he built his name interviewing underground rappers, SoundCloud artists, That's fine. But here's my thing. If I don't like how somebody is talking about the culture or is representing the culture or what have you, then I don't have to associate with that person, right? Like, I don't have to go to him if I don't like what he's saying, and he can still keep doing his thing and keep, comparing himself to Tupac or whatever it is that he does. He can keep doing that, right? But I don't have to associate with it. I can take, I can take my toys and go home. I can take my toys and go somewhere else. Now, a lot of people did some comments under the no jumper post and drew the line for him and said, you can buy property in a city, but you can't buy the respect and legacy an artist earned by shaping its culture from the inside. But a lot of times when you see these culture critics who are not from inside the culture, to me, that is the misstep, right? It's like they have this proximity and they assume that they assume that they're down because you have this proximity to the culture. And yet some of the things that you're saying automatically shows you don't really have the respect for the culture that you would want us to believe. And that happens over again. It happens a lot if you look at some of the streamers who are hanging with people inside the culture and then they have a bad day and then they start talking about whatever they start talking about. That's a class A example of someone who doesn't really respect the culture because they can call you bro and they use the N word when they feel like it. They think they respect the culture and they don't. And they think that they're inside the culture and they don't. Now, No Jumper built its platform interviewing and launching underground rap artists. And I have to say, having owned a magazine myself, it's always dope for people who want to help the culture, right? But here's the thing. Helping the culture versus trying to claim your own authenticity, you're claiming your own contribution, all these other things, sometimes they get intermingled, right? Now, let's be clear. A lot of his economic livelihood runs through black culture. And a lot of times people think because you're making money off of the black community, that you're automatically going to have a certain level of respect for the black community, or you're going to have a certain level of understanding for the black community. And I'm saying that I don't think that that's true. I don't think that that's true at all, because I think we still have blind spots and people still have blind spots. And when you are offending people in the culture who have so much love for Tupac, it speaks to a lack of sensitivity to the culture as well. Now, when I heard about this, my brain went to Sam Cooke. And you guys, if y'all, I'm a music lover. You see, I got my Stevie Wonder shirt on today. I went and saw him in concert, several years back now. But when I heard about Adam 22, it reminded me of Sam Cooke. And I did a little bit of research on this that I just want to share you real quick. Alan Klein secretly transferred ownership of Sam Cooke's own label, Tracy Limited, into his own name shortly before Cooke's death, right? So Sam Cooke thought he owned it all, but actually it was secretly transferred behind his back. Morris Levy at Roulette Records routinely put his name on songwriting and production credits for R&B artists he never wrote one note for, pocketing their royalties for decades. Specialty Records bought Little Richard's Tutti Frutti outright for $50 and paid him a fraction of a cent per record sold. Pat Boone built a career on sanitized cover versions of Fats Domino's and Little Richard's songs that outsold the originals because of segregated radio play. Georgia Gibbs recorded a note-for-note copy of Laverne Baker's Twiddle Dee that outsold Baker's version. Baker sued and tried to get Congress to allow exact copy covers and lost. Alan Freed took a co-writing credit on Chuck Berry's Maybelline without writing a word of it, collecting royalties off of Berry's work for years. So that's the pattern, you guys. That's the pattern, right? Adam 22 inserting himself into Tupac's legacy is a small modern version in a very old playbook. Proximity to Black culture treated as entitlement to a piece of it. It's very common. It's so common that when I did the research on this story, I was like, should I even do this story? That's how common it is. That's how common it is. Adam 22 and people like Adam 22, and I'm just giving you guys, this is just my opinion, and I shared some of the facts, right? People like to have that there's this history of claiming Black culture, taking credit for it, stealing it, right? But this is my thought, right? This is my thought. Why are so many of us still associating with people who we feel are stealing, who are disrespectful to the culture, who are insensitive to the culture? Because one thing that I feel like I've learned about Black culture is that we're going to keep on creating. We're going to keep on finding something to create. So do we need validation and proximity to whiteness for us to know we can keep creating stuff? Like, that's the question that I want everybody to think about, right? So if somebody is disrespecting the culture, I don't care what their platform is. Find somebody else who does the same thing. It's probably somebody out there, right? But why do I need to trust him with my access, with my knowledge, with my stories? Why do I need to continue to do that? And the other thing, when people show you who they are, believe them. Believe them. If I'm a Tupac fan, which I am, and you're going to disrespect Tupac's legacy, and I feel like, yo, that's the holy grail, why am I continuing to rock with you when you don't have the sensitivity for the things that I hold dear? That's the question that I want us to sort of, hold and sort of ask ourselves, right? Because it's giving desperation, right? It's giving validation, that we need validation so much. And this is where I got to give some credit and some shout outs to the streamers, the young streamers who I follow and I appreciate so much. And I don't know them personally. I don't know everything they're doing in their private life. I'm not even going to lie. But there's something that DDG, Kai Sinat, Reggie from Baltimore, Zeddy Will, Duke Dennis, Phantom, Ben Dadon have all taught me. These guys have their own vision, their own energy, their own way that they represent themselves to their audience. And one thing that they have shown is you don't need validation from anybody but the people that you're talking to, your fans. They keep it real with their fans, right? So when you have these other streamers who are trying to be, have a proximity to blackness, hello, right? Like, I've noticed, I've been watching how they move. Like, yeah, they might rock with them for a minute. When the people start getting a little hot, they step back from them, right? And so I'm just asking, I don't believe we need the validation that we may have thought we needed 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, because we're going to keep creating. We're going to keep finding a way to do exactly what we do to reach our audience. We don't need the validation. So if you're offending the people who I look up to or who are my idols or the people who I respect, I don't even have to rock with you, and I can keep doing what I do. I can keep doing what I do. And if you don't know, do I need to give you all those names again? Do I need to give you those names again? And that's what I'm saying about streamers, that you got to sort of like look at and see what they're doing. A lot of their day-to-day is a masterclass on being yourself, growing, doing what you have to do, and elevating the game. And I just, DDG specifically gets on and he like teaches you about all these different things. And I've been paying attention. And one of the things that I'm learning is that we truly, truly in 2026, we validate ourselves. And if y'all thinking y'all need somebody else to validate you, you ain't paying attention. All right, y'all. That is ours. I'm sorry. I was on a box on that. I was on my soapbox on that. But I'm just saying, y'all. Okay. So now there's another story that we're talking about. We got 5 stories today, and there's another story, and this is to the viewers. This is to, oh my God, what is she doing all the way over there? This is to the viewers, of the Yasmin breakdown. And I wanted to share this. I wanted to share this with you guys because I have been covering, one of the things that I've been doing is I've been covering a lot of women's sports. And one of the things that in becoming a full-time, content creator and a full-time YouTuber as well, one of the things that I realized is that Black women in sports could really use as much press, as much, people talking about what they're doing as they can. And so Angel Reese has been a great inspiration for me to put out more content. Naomi Osaka has been a great inspiration, as well as Coco Gauff. And so you will see in my timeline when they are playing, I am, I'm doing watch alongs, I'm doing recaps, I'm doing reactions, because I want those ladies to know what an inspiration they are. But some of my viewers have said like, hey, you're covering Black women and you need to include Madison Keys. And I wanted to say something to you guys about this, and I want to be as sensitive as possible, and I want to be as spot on as possible as I can. In my coverage of Black women at the French Open and Wimbledon, right, I did not include coverage of Madison Keys, right? But I excluded her because I thought it accurately related to how she identified, right? So here's the thing. Madison Keys identifies as biracial or mixed race, or she says, I'm just Madison Keys, right? And I want to respect that. I do not have a problem with that, but I don't want to call someone or label someone as a Black woman, and that's not how they identify, right? Now, I want to share, because y'all know I'm a sociologist, I want to share a little bit of history with you about this, right? There was something called, back in the day, called the one drop rule, right? And the one drop rule was If you had one drop of black blood, you were considered black. Okay. This was a legal and social framework, right? It was mostly used in the Jim Crow South because they wanted to classify you, not to affirm anyone's identity, but to expand who could be legally segregated and discriminated against, right? It was a tool of control, not a definition itself, right? So that's the first thing that I want to say. Now, Madison Keys talked about, how she identifies in 2015, right? I'm not bringing her up because I want to exclude her or be insensitive or mislabel her or whatever. I am cool with it, right? I'm cool with everything that she's doing. I don't want to just give someone a label or identify them because this is like, oh, well, you have a black parent, so you should consider yourself black. I don't think we should do that. And I don't feel like I should do it, right? Now, she's not the only public figure navigating this, right? You had Miami Dolphins head coach Michael McDaniel was quote unquote publicly white until 2021 when it became known his father and grandmother are black. And the moment that came out, the public and media instantly reclassified how they talked about him. Okay. That shows just how externally imposed these sort of labels and categories really are. Now, the fourth thing that I want to say is that there's a difference between denying an identity and declining a label, right? Keys has never denied that her father is black. She simply resisted being boxed into a single category, right? A distinction worth noting. Now, this is a distinct choice from rejecting blackness altogether, right? And so I don't think it's fair for us to say, oh, she just doesn't want to be black either, right? And so me saying, hey, these are black women in Wimbledon or what have you, I am trying to honor what she has said previously, right? Not trying to exclude her or make her feel weird. That's not what, you know what I mean? That's not what I'm doing. And this is how I feel about this now, right? Respecting her choice doesn't cost the culture anything, right? If we're talking about black women and we don't include someone who considers himself biracial, I don't think hey, it is what it is. And I feel like letting a biracial player define herself on her own terms, I think that's important. I think that the impulse to almost have the one drop rule in your head and go, oh, well, you have a black parent, so you should be calling yourself black or whatever. If they don't feel comfortable with that, I don't feel like we should be doing that. You know what I'm saying? Now, if her people were to, email me, and say, hey, Yasmin, I don't mind being considered a black woman, or I don't mind that label, then, that's a whole different conversation. But in this climate where we are right now, I feel far more comfortable supporting people saying what they want. I'd rather call someone mixed race if that's how they identify, or biracial if that's what they want. I do not want to give them a label or an association that they may not be comfortable with, right? And I think that that's very important. And let me tell you something else. I'm not offended that if a biracial or mixed race person says no, I don't identify as black, doesn't bother me. If they say, hey, I feel like I'm white, or I feel like whatever, it doesn't bother me, right? It is their choice. And this is something that I want to, talk about a little bit further, is that being black is not this one experience. But imagine someone coming from a biracial background who has, say, their white side of their family, but they're disconnected from the Black side of their family. And here you have people trying to push a label or an identity on you that you don't even have any association with. That's something that we don't even think about a lot of times when we're like, oh, so-and-so doesn't want to say they Black. You see what I'm saying? And we all know within the culture, the challenges that you may have with your own family, right? So you have, again, someone's biracial experience is not necessarily the same quote unquote Black experience that someone else may have had. And I feel that we should give everybody space, not only Madison Keys, but anybody else. I feel that we should give them space. It doesn't mean that I don't like them, I can't root for them, I can't support them. It doesn't mean any of that at all. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. I wanted to talk about that with you guys today because we do not know her family situation enough to say how she should feel about the Black side of her family. And I know y'all, I know I'm cutting it to the quick on that, but it's the truth. And everybody within the culture, and y'all know, y'all been at the cookout, y'all been on the porch, y'all been at the family reunion, y'all know exactly what I'm saying. It is more than a label. It is more than an identification. And so I wanted to let you guys know that I am in fact sensitive to it. And I was not trying to be insensitive or mean-spirited, but simply trying to respect what I thought was her comfort zone. So, all right, you guys, thank you so much for hanging in here with me. We are getting down to the fifth story of tonight. What is going on, y'all? I have worked so hard to try to get these lives. We're going to watch one day. Y'all going to be like, man, we got 1,000 people in the room. We getting there. We going to get there. Right. We just had to get me a format first that worked. You guys, I have not done a lot on, David, the artist. And it's so funny because I'm so crazy, y'all, because until I think I saw it on TikTok, his name, I was calling him D4VD. I thought he was trying to call himself DVD. I'm serious, y'all. And this is a serious case. And I'm not trying to crack jokes, but I'm just trying to say that sometimes people will try to, make it all fancy with their names and they end up, confusing people. But let's get into our last story of the night. There appears to be a leak in the coroner's office handling the David murder case. And I'm going to give you 4 points to think about and my take on this whole thing. So I'm going to give you some case background, but the leak investigation inside the LA County Medical Examiner's office shows that institutional discipline tends to loosen and then suddenly tighten under scrutiny when the defendant is famous. I'm going to give you some background right now. Singer David, who, his mama calls him David Anthony Burke. He is 21 years old. He was arrested in April of 2026 on suspicion of murdering 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, whose dismembered remains were found in September 2025 in the trunk of a Tesla registered to him. He's charged with first-degree murder with special circumstances, lewd acts on a child under 14, and unlawful mutilation of human remains, and has pleaded not guilty. Prosecutors allege he stabbed her and dismembered her body to prevent her from exposing their relationship and derailing his career. He remains jailed without bail. Now, I want to give you 4 points on this particular story, because when you have a celebrity, you have a crime, you have a murder, you have a young person. This girl was 14 years old. There are a lot of things that we need to consider, right? There's a lot going on. Now, more than a dozen medical examiner employees, This is investigators and office staff have been ordered to sit for recorded interviews over whether they viewed and leaked case files before the autopsy report was made public. Okay, so this is the big update right now. It's being run by the LA County Department of Human Resources that is independent of the murder case itself. Now, you guys probably have watched as much Law and Order as me. So you may have heard about a jury pool being tainted. If there are leaks from the coroner's office, this can't be good for the defendant because it is tainting the nearby jury pool. Now, something, especially in Los Angeles, I would say Los Angeles, but I'm sure in cities throughout, the country or whatever, you have people like they're selling your information, they're calling TMZ and they're giving your information or whatever. This is happening in the coroner's office. Now, say someone sells the information, they leak it, whatever. Now you have prejudiced potential jury members before this case ever goes to trial. This is not good. This is not good. Okay, so that is what this separate investigation is about. The second point I want to give you today is that a defense attorney unconnected to this case has said this could be raised in court, the leaking, while acknowledging a full dismissal on privacy grounds is unlikely given the severity of the underlying murder charges. So here's the thing. You're leaking the autopsy report. You're leaking the coroner's report. Have you done so much damage that this case should be dismissed? Okay. So this is why this is like, again, this is so weird. Why are people, leaking stuff? And I'm telling you, why are they leaking stuff? They're leaking stuff to get paid. Ain't nobody leaking nothing for free. Let's be clear about that. If somebody is leaking some information, guarantee you a check came with it. Guarantee you. They ain't nobody leaking nothing for free. Ain't nobody leaking nothing for the good of mankind. On God, on that. Like they not. How much you gonna pay me? Okay. How much can you? Okay. Well, I called so-and-so so that they could pay me more. Come on now. Now, here's the thing that all of the press that this particular case has received has been really strange to me because this guy, David, he has not even been indicted. I had to do my research and I was like, has he even been indicted yet? He has not. He was charged via a criminal complaint, which is why the case is headed to a preliminary hearing instead. Now, a grand jury did convene multiple times, you guys, on this case, but they never returned an indictment. And this is something TMZ has been doing a fantastic job of reporting on this, and I wanted to share that. A TMZ legal producer read that as a sign that the prosecution's case wasn't a slam dunk at this stage, right? If it had been strong enough, an indictment could have let the case skip the preliminary hearing altogether. So hear what I'm saying. So let me give you some context on that, because this case, he hasn't even been indicted and we got all these shenanigans. Okay. Grand jurors typically vote the same day the prosecutor finishes presenting the evidence or within days, right? Same day or within days. It does not usually take multiple separate sessions when a case is strong. Okay. So in this case, they're having repeated convenings without an indictment. This is not looking good for the prosecution because what is going on? Why we got to keep reconvening without an indictment? Okay. And so that's just very interesting. And we're going to continue to follow this. Now, the preliminary hearing is locked for July 21st. So it's right around the corner and it's expected to run 3 to 5 days with witness testimony. So I just wanted to give you guys sort of what is happening behind the scenes, and that here it is, the criminal justice system, people should be about fairness, about, following the rules, and we literally have stuff being leaked. So how is that going to shape up for this particular case? Right now, I'm going to go into our chat and see if anybody has any comments today, any comments at all. I know you guys are used to me talking about sports, but I wanted to expand my horizons and see. Hi, chat. I just want to say hi, chat, and see if you guys had anything. If you guys don't have anything further, my name is Yasmin Shiraz. If you have any questions about anything that we talked about today, put it in the chat before we wrap up. The Michael Jackson biopic, $1 billion milestone. It's a big deal. Usher and Chris Brown, they weren't fighting, but some other people at the concert were. Adam 22 versus Tupac, please. Tupac gonna be Tupac. We don't know you. Okay. 4, Madison Keys, be who you are, girlfriend. We ain't mad at you. And number 5, DVD case. They are, leaking his situation or what have you. Reddit, Milky Way 9504. How are you doing? Thank you so much for watching and being a part of our community. Did any of our stories, jump out at you today? Do you have any question, statement, comment regarding any of our stories today? I am so, as a Michael Jackson fan, I am so impressed that Michael Jackson's video, his biopic has crossed the $1 billion mark. It is a big deal. I'm really happy about that, and I wanted to clarify. I know Reddit Milky Way, you have, I think, been on a chat. I think you've been in a tennis chat, and I wanted to address that Madison Keys piece, because I got love for all the people. I have love for all the people, but I certainly feel we should respect, people for how they want to identify. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know how you feel about that, but that was something today as well that we talked about. And Usher and Chris Brown, it's always a tough conversation for me, watching Chris as a young artist. When he was 16, one of my friends was the head of the publicity department at the label where he was, and she sent tickets for my daughter's birthday. And I don't remember, my daughter was super young too. And we went to the concert, and he was just absolutely phenomenal. And he was only 16 at the time. Yeah, absolutely. Reddit, I hear you on that. Reddit in the chat is talking about, I agree with you about let people identify themselves. A lot of people got mad at Tyla due to her classification. And it's true. And I think that I remember the Tyla situation, and how I felt about Tyla, though, was this. I feel like she has a right to say she's colored, because that's the language that they use, I believe, in South Africa. But I do feel if you come over to America, you can be like, yeah, I realize this isn't a term that you guys embrace, but where we are, you know what I mean? We call each other this. This is what we say. And I think that nuance would have changed the conversation, right? Like if people understood that in South Africa, mixed people are called colored, biracial people are called colored, they would be like, oh, okay. Instead of people going, oh, she calling herself colored, we black, we don't call ourselves. You feel what I'm saying? I think that nuance, because I certainly, I looked it up. I looked up colored. I looked up, like, well, why would she feel so comfortable talking about herself to she was on the Breakfast Club or whatever. Why would she feel so comfortable calling herself colored on the Breakfast Club? I remember doing that. I remember talking to her about that and saying, well, I gotta figure that out. I gotta, see, because there must be some history there. And sure enough, there was history there, or what have you. And I feel like a lot of people, we don't know the history. And I think that's the motivation for me for, this particular show, is to just try to go behind the scenes a little bit and say, okay, well, this is what you're not thinking about, or maybe this is something that you're not aware of, or what have you. And that's been really the motivation from doing the show. Now let me ask you something, Reddit Milky, because I got you on the line right now. If she's okay with not be identifying as Black, which I feel like, hey, or calling herself biracial, right? And there's, say, a media outlet or whatever that is highlighting Black tennis players, do you think them excluding her is wrong? Reddit Milky, how do you feel about that? Because I don't think it's wrong. I think it's just you reading the room. Like, that's what I think. But I would love to hear what you have to say, or put it in the chat and let me know what you're thinking. Tomorrow, guys, I'm going to try to come back on tomorrow at 7:45. I did research on 5 stories today, and I want to build a community where I look at this chat and I got 1,000 people in here, and we're all talking about, yeah, I watched the Michael Jackson biopic 10 times. And I want somebody to be like, yeah, I went to the Usher Chris Brown concert. Right. So Reddit Milky, we starting with us. But listen, we gonna have 1,000 people in here in our chat, and we're gonna be talking about it, and we're gonna be talking about somebody saying, yeah, I know who leaked the coroner files on the David case. And so we're going to just keep growing. And I do enjoy streaming, and I do enjoy going live. I've done a lot of, speaking and all sorts of different type of commentary work over my career. And so being able to do this just feels so natural for me. And so, hey, Reddit Milky, let me know what you think about that, because if you don't have an answer to that, I'm going to go ahead and head out today. And I have some shorts that I need to edit really quickly. And so, yes. Oh, wait. No, I think it's okay. Yes. Thank you, Reddit Milky. I appreciate that. So Reddit Milky says, no, I think it's okay to include in that case. I do think in some cases people will never bring it up, their other half, until they get famous. I agree with what you're saying about that. But this is the other thing. Listen, we all know in the Black community, me speaking as a Black woman, we know how challenging things can be with our own families, right? And so when you make the assumption that, hey, somebody else is not going through anything challenging with their family, I think that's an assumption, and that's a step too far, right? Because you could be somebody who's biracial and have a total connection to the white side, if white is that other race, a side of your family, and not have any connection to the Black side of your family, right? And so now you become famous, and people are starting to put a label on you, and you may have never even associated with that side. And that's something that people do not talk about. And yet, if you had never talked to the Italian side of your family, and all of a sudden you become famous, and all the Italian people are embracing you, and you ain't never talked to Italian people, you will be like, wait, what? You know what I'm saying? And so I want to give her grace, and I want to give her space, because I don't know her story. I don't know her story. I don't know what her connection is to the Black community, if there is one, and I don't want to assume that there is one. I don't want to make that assumption. Let her be great. Let her decide. Let her choose. Let her identify. Yes. Yes. Now Reddit Milky is just starting stuff. Okay. But you know what? We need to do, we need to do a live or a video about that, because the story around, and the story around Zoe Saldana playing Nina Simone, has a lot to do with, identifying as a black woman versus identifying, right, as the Latinx or what have you. I think that's a part of it. But I also feel that it breaks my heart a little bit that when it comes to films and even book adaptations from, a book adaptation to a film, right? A lot of times people don't understand, the viewers, the person who created the book themselves don't understand that a lot of times the movie producer is getting whoever they perceive is the most bankable star. They're not getting the most, ethnically correct person. They're not getting the person who even might be the right skin tone. They're not getting the person who necessarily even has the right background. A lot of times they're getting either the most bankable star or the star that they think is the best for the money, and maybe they don't have the budget that they have. Sam Jackson has famously talked about how a lot of actors from the UK are coming in and they're, taking these jobs from, Black American actors. And we are not borrowing from the nuance that a Black actor from the urban inner city has. And we're hiring like Idris Elba in The Wire, and he's from London, right? And what would that character have been like if Stringer Bell was played by a Black guy from Baltimore? No shade to Idris Elba, but you feel what I'm saying? And so there's this ongoing conversation about our identity, even as it relates when you have, say, somebody from the UK versus somebody who is American. David Oyelowo, who played Martin Luther King, he's from the UK, right? And you can say, oh, well, yeah, I think he did a great job, but who else could have done a job who is from America? And so it's a great conversation to have, because I think, it makes you wonder, like, what are we doing? Why are we doing it this way? Does it make sense to do it this way? And what are the conversations we should be having about these things? So I don't know how you feel about, Stringer Bell, actually being from London as opposed to Baltimore. I don't know how you feel about David Oyelowo, playing Martin Luther King in the movie, and he's also from the UK. Those are real, statements and real thoughts and real things that should be brought up. My thought, though, if I can share about the UK people, is this: as long as the Black people from the UK respect the work that we've done over here to kick the door down, I'm fine with them having opportunities. But the minute that you try to act like you built the opportunities for Black faces to be in white spaces in America, then I have a problem with you. But as long as you understand, you stand on the shoulders of Samuel L. Jackson, Denzel Washington, Delroy Lindo, like all the people who have been here, Lawrence Fishburne, Mario Van Peebles, like as long as you understand Keenan Ivory Wayans, as long as you understand that, you will never have a problem with me. But the minute that you start talking about or thinking that you have created the doors that you're walking through, and you don't pay homage to Richard Roundtree, Spike Lee, people like that, I have a problem with you. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So it's like keep it 100, because a lot of these black actors have fought when there were no roles, Viola Davis, Angela Bassett. I mean, so many people had to, Will Smith, though I'm still mad at him about Chris Rock. But a lot of these opportunities, when Will Smith became like Mr. 4th of July, he created a space for himself that if Damson Idris becomes Mr. 4th of July at some point in his career, he would stand on the shoulders of Will Smith. Period. He would, because before Will Smith, there was no Mr. 4th of July. The only type of, sort of modern day actor that has that type of energy is Tom Cruise. Okay. So again, as long as they have respect for all the blood, sweat, and tears that's happened over on this soil, I'm not going to be mad. I'm not going to be mad. But like the minute that they are like, oh, we're better than y'all, then we fighting at the on the red carpet. Reddit Milky Way 9504 says, but I do understand that mixed people have different struggles, and I just think blackface is crazy. I think it is too, especially from a half black. I try not to be petty, but our civil rights leaders should be off limits. And I don't think it's petty. I think you're, really voicing a real concern, or what have you. And I feel that way as well. But like I said, with David Oyelowo being from the UK, playing Martin Luther King, and I believe Ava, directed that a film. I'm sure she did her due diligence. I would believe that she did her due diligence, and he was probably the best person that she found. I would believe that. But I do understand someone saying, well, gosh, we're in America. Why can't our black leaders be portrayed by black Americans? Like, I do understand why somebody would feel that way. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get that part. Daniel, yes. Playing for Hampton. Listen, it's very tough. I mean, it's really, really tough, because the conversation has to become, why have you not found, and it's not to say that they can't play all these other roles or whatever, but I get what you're saying when you say our civil rights leaders. I get that. I get what you're saying, yes. Yeah, Will Smith. I got to figure out. Yeah, I am gonna do a show on, or at least a segment where I talk about Will Smith. I still haven't forgiven Will Smith, for a lot of the things that we just talked about black actors and things like that. We fight so much to get the roles that we have, and Black Hollywood is such a small space. And so, when he slaps, Chris Rock in the face at the Oscars or whatever, like 99% of Black Hollywood felt that, because everybody knows everybody. Right. So, it's not even 6 degrees of separation. It's probably 3 degrees of separation. And so just to be in a space, whatever space that he was in, that made him feel that was okay, it's still hard for me as a writer, as a producer, as someone who, understands how hard our work is in the field. It's just hard, because it's almost like, you're hurting the very people who are supposed to be working and you're supposed to be in solidarity with. And it's just been hard being from Delaware, Will Smith being from Philly. It's just a very challenging, all these years later, like, I don't know how many years later, it has been, but it has been a challenging thing for me, to be able to accept that and what that means to us as viewers. And, obviously everybody don't have to get along. Like, Eddie Murphy or Cosby, Bill Cosby famously did not like Eddie Murphy, right? He like did not like him, and he at different times would talk about, oh, he's vulgar or he's vile. Like he would say, like, we can look up the quotes, and maybe I should be doing lives on all these things, but so thank you for talking to me, because guess what, girl, you give me some ideas. But I definitely, remember, Bill Cosby not liking Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy came out and, he was, hey, he was who he was, and he's the greatest. He's a GOAT as far as I'm concerned. But when all those things came out about Bill Cosby and, the court case and all of the accusers or whatever, Eddie Murphy did not, come out of his, mansion in Beverly Hills or wherever he lives and, get on his soapbox and tear down Bill Cosby. He didn't do it, and that's what I'm saying is, like, you can dislike people or not like them, whatever, but there's still a certain decorum. And for me with Will, I just wish it was different. Yeah. Okay. Reddit Milky Way says Jada has alopecia, so I think Chris was wrong. Yeah, he shouldn't have slapped Chris. Chris and Jada really already didn't like each other. I think it's very weird that he made that comment. Yeah, I don't know. I definitely, I need to be writing down some of these ideas though. I don't know. I know she bleaches her hair. I'm a naturalist, so I'm all into hair care and stuff. And I know bleaching your hair is not good for your long-term hair health. But I do understand about the alopecia, and I do understand that they felt, or maybe even she felt, that his joke was a bridge too far. I get all of that. And I even get, Will having a terse conversation with Chris after the fact. Like, I even get that, right? But I'm just not sure that, I'm not sure. I don't believe slapping him in the middle of him being the host for the Oscars was appropriate. You know what I'm saying? So I get someone has alopecia. I get they don't like each other. I get, whatever. I get all the things, but I still feel like it's a bitter pill. It's a bitter pill to swallow, because Will Smith was always sort of perceived and viewed as sort of at this certain level. And now he's not. You know what I'm saying? Now he's not. And so now it's like, I know for me, when I see photos of him or whatever and her and all that stuff, I can't even look at their photos. I can't even look at it, because I'm just like, it just leaves such a bad taste in your mouth when you've worked in the industry and you've watched people grow and become great. It's a hard thing, because it just reminds me of, like, how did we get here? You know what I mean? So it's hard for me as a person to look at Jada and look at Will right now. Like, every time I know their son was just in, I don't know, Milan. He was somewhere. I couldn't even look at that stuff. I can't even look at it. I just be like, I can't look at it, because it's like I said, Black Hollywood is a pretty small place, and we're fighting for every role. We're competing for everything. We're competing for, money, opportunity, validity, everything we're competing for. And when something like that happens, it just devalues the work in so many ways. And so, but hopefully, one day, I'm just one fan. So I'm sure Will Smith has millions and millions of fans, so he don't have to worry about me. But I don't know. I didn't like the ick of that. The ick of that was bad. And, I don't know if you ever, in where you grew up, Reddit Milky Way, but like, there were certain things that you didn't do in front of mixed company. And I'm going to say it like that. And so when you go and you show your behind in front of mixed company, like, that's something too. You know what I'm saying? Like, you ain't supposed to be showing your hind parts I'm sorry, in front of mixed company. So if you decide to do that, you got some explaining to do. And so, I don't know that the audience would have known what was going on had Will not carried it like that. And so it was something of, an embarrassment for Black culture as well. And so that's what I'll say on that. But I mean, so I struggle looking at him, their whole family. I be like, I just got, now little Willow, I still, can look at her. But the rest of them, it's hard for me. It just is hard, because I don't know. It just feels like it brought us down so many rungs, and maybe I have to detach from that mindset and that thinking. But I'm gonna do a video. I'm gonna do a video on some of these topics that you talked about, because you got me fired up today. But thank you so much for coming and watching. Please share this with other people so that we can grow this community. Like I said, I want 1,000 people on the side of this screen where we all just talking. Yeah, I ain't like Will Smith because he did Wild Wild West. Oh man, I didn't. Some people hated on him for that movie, and the Wild Wild West. So let's try to see what that is and see how we go. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap up and thank you again, and everybody. This has been a Yasmin Breakdown. Please check out my join my Patreon page, and check out my website, yasminbreakdown.com. Support independent media. You can't complain about it if we don't have it, if you don't support it.